I'm Dr. Orion Taraban, and this is Psych Hacks, Better Living Through Psychology. And the topic of today's short talk is, you get what you pay for. This is the third part of my three-part series on why successful men use escorts. So be sure to check out the first two episodes before proceeding. All right, if you're still with me after all this time, thank you. Thank you for keeping your reactive judgment at bay long enough to entertain a different perspective. At this point, however, let's shift away from explaining why successful men might use escorts to responding to the most common objections to this explanation. Far and away, the most common pushback I receive to this argument is something along the lines of, yeah, but Orion, how gross and transactional is that relationship? An escort isn't going to love you. She may not even like you. In fact, it's entirely possible that she may even loathe and despise you, and that she only masks her true feelings for you because she's being paid. In light of this, how can you possibly advocate men pursue this option? So how would I respond to this rebuttal? Well, first and foremost, by reminding the objector that I'm not advocating this option, I'm explaining it, which is value neutral. Remember, I've never done this myself. I'm just explaining why successful men hire escorts when they choose to do so. Next, I would agree with the crux of this objection. Absolutely. There is certainly no guarantee that an escort will love or even like her client. But here's the rub. There's no guarantee of that in a relationship either. I know countless men who are married to women who dislike them, if not outright hate them. A non-transactional relationship, whatever that is, does not guarantee, let's say, authentic positive regard. Men who date traditionally can and do end up in loveless, sexless marriages. And this, contrary to popular belief, isn't always due to the fact that these men are screwing up in some capacity, like by doing too many of the wrong things or too few of the right things. For example, among other things, it's much more likely for a woman to disrespect a safe, good man than a dangerous bad boy. Mostly because the good man would never even think to implement aversive contingencies against her behavior. But there's another, more important reason why this objection is inadequate. Namely, a transactional relationship in no way invalidates the possibility of authentic positive regard. Obviously, this doesn't always happen. But it certainly doesn't never happen. In fact, some of the most satisfying relationships in people's lives are relationships with those they pay. The head of their jujitsu dojo, their stylist or barber, their local bartender, the owner of their favorite hole-in-the-wall restaurant, their therapist. Just because money changes hands doesn't mean that the emotional dimension of the relationship is invalidated or rendered moot. Like, as a therapist, I can tell you that I authentically care about my clients. And that caring is a big part of what heals. It also factored into my decision to enter into this profession as opposed to some other line of work. So there's professional goodness of fit. That said, I'm not a charity. I do this for a living. And because I provide a service of value to others, it's reasonable that I should be compensated for that service. Otherwise, my ability to provide that service indefinitely would be compromised. Even nonprofits need fundraisers. If people didn't pay, we wouldn't continue to work together. However, the fact that there is a financial transaction at the heart of our relationship does not nullify the authenticity of the feelings we share in the connection we form. Obviously, therapy just wouldn't work otherwise. It's the connection that heals. In fact, in one study I read on therapeutic outcomes, the single greatest factor associated with patient improvement was their perception that their therapist liked them. So on some level, it's my job to like my patients. And let me tell you, if I secretly hated my patients, I probably would have needed to find another line of work a long time ago. So I don't buy the idea that people can't have authentic, caring relationships with professionals. And I don't buy the idea that you effortlessly or inevitably receive authentic care in non-professional relationships. Professional relationships can be good and professional relationships can be bad. Non-professional relationships can be good and non-professional relationships can be bad. But it's actually less likely for professional relationships to be bad for the simple reason that if they were consistently bad, they would likely have gone out of business by now. Here's another way to look at it. Let's say that you and I go out to eat for dinner. And when we open the door and walk in, the hostess gives us this big smile the moment she sees us and says, "Hey, welcome in. We're so happy to have you." And you respond, "Oh, please. We both know you're not actually happy to see us. You're just a paid professional doing your job, so you can cut the bullshit." Well, first of all, guess who's never going to be taken out to a restaurant again? It's like, no shit. The hostess is only there because she's getting paid. But maybe she went into the hospitality industry instead of metallurgy or venture capital or endocrinology because it's a good fit for her personality. She might actually enjoy being warm and nice, so she found a job where she could get paid for doing just that. And second, it's nice to be greeted with a smile when you walk through a door. Like that's part of the experience you pay for when you go out to eat at a restaurant. Contrast that with how most men are received when they walk through other doors, maybe even the doors of their own homes. Are they greeted with attention and warmth and consideration and service? In general, not getting what they want does not cause people's desires to disappear. It just motivates them to seek out the satisfaction of those desires in other ways. Now, before I go any further, if you're liking what you're hearing, please consider sending this episode to someone who might benefit from its message, because it's word of mouth referrals like this that really help to make the channel grow. You can also hit the thanks button and tip me in proportion to the value you feel you've derived from this episode. I'm proud to announce that my book, The Value of Others, is now available for pre-sale on Amazon. It'll be released in just a few days. So take action now to get your hands on it as soon as possible. I'm also writing original content for my free newsletter every week. If you'd like to sign up, you can do so through my website. Finally, please fill out an inquiry form on my website if you're interested in booking a paid consultation. The links to everything I just discussed are in the description below. Please check them out. It's how you can support me and my mission on this channel. All right, let's get back to it. So while it's certainly possible for explicitly transactional relationships to be soulless and deceptive, this is far from the inherent nature of such relationships. Just like people can and do feel authentic care and interest for those with whom they broker explicitly transactional relationships, they can and do feel indifference and disinterest for those with whom they have traditional romantic relationships. And while it may be true that you can't enter into the highest relationship potentials in explicitly transacted relationships, in such relationships, the relationship downsides are mitigated considerably. What does that mean? Well, let's say a man hires an escort and has a bad experience with her. He never has to call that woman again. He's out an hour and $1,000. Contrast that with the risks and expenses associated with a loveless, sexless marriage. Getting out of that situation could cost that man millions of dollars and years of emotional hardship. It's far, far more expensive. I recently did a consultation with a man who told me that he added up the divorce settlement and 10 years of alimony and divided that total, which did not include the maintenance costs throughout the relationship, by the approximate number of sexual encounters he enjoyed with his wife over the course of their marriage. When he did this, he realized that he functionally paid his ex $50,000 per sexual encounter. And I think we can all agree that's a ludicrous amount of money to pay for sex. Explicitly transactional relationships may not be the highest to which people can attain, but they are far from the lowest. And the mitigation of risk may be a much more important consideration to highly successful men. In these relationships, a slightly lower ceiling is more than offset by a much higher floor. And this is precisely because when we deal with professionals, we reasonably expect some degree of professionalism on their part. It doesn't matter if they're having a bad day, or they're stressed out, or they have other things on their minds. That's not an excuse for rude, disrespectful, incompetent, or negligent behavior in a professional environment. And in general, the more we pay, the higher the expectations for the quality of service we receive. Let me tell you, the waiters at French Laundry treat their diners extremely well. They are not rude or disrespectful or aggressive, and they certainly treat their customers with much more attentiveness, grace, and competence than do the waiters at a local diner. And if you aren't treated as well when you pay less, think about how well you are treated when you appear to pay nothing. Just consider how many women behave in their traditional romantic relationships. Some of these women treat a stranger in the supermarket with more respect and consideration than their own husbands, and they often feel justified in doing so. As I've said before, one of the most dangerous relationship beliefs is the belief that in your relationship, you are finally free to be yourself, warts and all. In point of fact, a relationship, like a job, is a privilege, and one you have to constantly earn anew by providing sufficient value. It is a privilege to be a husband and a privilege to be a wife. It is a privilege to be a boyfriend and a privilege to be a girlfriend. Relationships are roles, and we don't ever get to stop playing. It's also important to remember that people don't just go out to eat because they don't know how to cook. A lot of the time, people go out to eat because they don't want to go shopping and then cook and then clean up afterwards. They want to delegate those chores and secure a desirable solution on demand. And you know what? It's nice to be taken care of. Like, it feels good, which is why people pay for experiences that make them feel good every day. Women, how often do you come over to your man's place on demand, service him sexually, and then leave? Probably not that often. In fact, many of you might consider such an interaction exploitative or beneath your dignity to perform. It's like, fair enough. But that doesn't stop men from desiring that experience. Like, just because your man won't cook for you doesn't mean you stop wanting to be cooked for. You just go outside the relationship to satisfy that desire, and you pay for the privilege of doing so. So let's recap. Across these past few episodes, I've attempted to explain why successful men, that is, men who shouldn't have difficulty accessing traditional dating opportunities with enthusiastic women, use escorts. They do so because traditional dating has become far too expensive for them by virtue of their success and optionality. From the perspective of these men, 3 dates could cost $15,000 or more with absolutely no guarantee of mutual interest or a sexual encounter. The time and energy that men spend in attracting and maintaining women could be expended in more profitable ways when men eschew traditional dating, including devoting more time and energy to any not explicitly transactional relationships in their lives that may be more pleasant and rewarding. Men who use escorts often secure sexual encounters with more attractive women more cheaply, or at least they can pursue sexual experiences with the women of their choosing. What's more, they are generally assured of a professional relationship that mitigates their risk and limits their downside. Finally, they enjoy more power and control over nearly every aspect of the relationship. In short, successful men use escorts because it makes more economic sense than traditional dating, and it solves a number of problems that become increasingly salient as a function of their success. Now, many women, if they've gotten this far, are just going to respond, well, if these men like their prostitutes so much, then they can just go off with them for all I care and let me be. I wouldn't want one of those disgusting losers anyway. And that, of course, is their right. But I'm here to tell you that not all men who use prostitutes are disgusting losers. And they're probably not going to change their behavior as a consequence of your judgment anyway. Think of the foregoing as market research. I'm here to tell you that many of your target customers are buying a different product. Why might that be? Get curious. Denigrating your customers as stupid or tasteless isn't going to bring back your market share. However, if you can understand as non-defensively as possible why these customers might be passing up your opportunity in favor of another, you might be able to appropriately adapt your strategy to recapture their attention. In any case, I hope I've provided you with some food for thought. What do you think? Does this fit with your own experience? Let me know in the comments below. As always, I appreciate your support and thank you for listening.